I'm working remotely quite long time. This is why I want to share my pros and cons of working remotely. And actually it's not for everybody. First of all, let's start with positive things. We don't need any time to spend on transportation, which actually means if normally your job is situated somewhere in city center, normally you need half of an hour or an hour to get to the job and then back, which means you spend 2 or 2.5 hours every single day just to get to the office and back. Obviously, with remote job you spend 0 time and it is really awesome, which means you have more time for yourself or your family. The second important point when you are working remotely is that you normally have a better setup. Actually, when you are coming to the office, normally you are getting a monitor and maybe a MacBook. It's not bad, but most people have at home better setup. They really have a mouse and keyboard that they like, maybe 4K monitor that nobody will buy you in the office. For example, you might have a standing desk or a really nice chair that you like. Which means your setup at home almost always is better than in the office, because you will just spend more money on yourself than your company on you. The next important point is of course working conditions. If you are working in the office, normally you have a huge open space where you have like 20 or 100 people and it's not super comfortable and really noisy. You have a lot of people, different smells, people are getting sick and so on and so on. If you have at home a room that you can just close and nobody disturb you, then you have your perfect working conditions. You can open a window, you always have fresh air, there is a complete silence in the room and nobody disturbs you. Also, when you are working remotely, it is difficult to get sick. When you are in the office every single day or during transportation, there are a lot of people who are sick, you just communicate with them or you're just nearby and then you just sick again and again. The next point that is really important for me is that at home it is easier to eat healthy. When you are working in the office, you might just go outside and grab something randomly. At home you normally will cook what you prefer and it might be really healthy. And now you might think that remote job is really awesome because we have just positive things there. This is why I have my list of negative things and not all of them are clear from the beginning. And the first point, it is more difficult to find a remote job. First of all, because people want to see you at the office. This is just their mentality. They really want to control what you are doing the whole day, and it is much easier to do it in the office. Normally people won't play games in the office or do some other stuff. While working remotely, nobody can control you that strict. This is why lots and lots of companies want you to return to the office, and it might be really difficult to find a 100% remote job. And some companies might propose you to just come at the office once or twice per week, which is not that bad. My next point is extremely important for beginners. I don't recommend you to work remotely if you are a beginner. Why is that? Because actually it is easier to communicate with people in the office, it is easier to come to somebody and ask him. If you are working remotely and you just write to the guy, he can simply ignore you if he is inside his task. And this is totally fine, but normally inside the office, people won't ignore you. And as a beginner, you will have hundreds of questions every 10 minutes. This is why I highly recommend for beginners to work in the office if it is possible. But obviously, if you have a lot of experience, it's much easier to work remotely. You simply understand what is need to be done, you simply have your feature, you implement it several days, it is done, you show it, test it, and you are finished. You don't need that much communication with other people because you are mostly just doing your job. One more problem that I see is bad internet. When you are working from home and your internet is not working or simply bad, you can't really fix it, which means you can't participate in meetings, and when, for example, all people are in office and you are remote and your internet is not working, it is your problem, not theirs, and actually you just can't work like this. The same goes with bad setup. When a lot of people started to work remotely, they normally had just their MacBook and this is it. A lot of people didn't have even additional monitors at home, which actually means they were using the microphone of their MacBook and the camera. And they're really awful. The sound is not that good and the image also. Okay, with image we can live, but it is really difficult to communicate with other person if they don't have a decent microphone. Actually, any microphone starting from $20, which is external, will be better than default internal microphone. Which means you need to invest a little bit of time and money in your setup to make your communication with other people much easier. The next point is something that people are not that aware of. When you're working from home every single day, you really consume a lot of water and electricity, which means your bills every single month are much higher than expected. And this is something that you must keep in mind because in the office you are getting these things for free. The next problem that I see in a lot of people, it is difficult for them to stay motivated. Just imagine that you are sitting alone at home and you have your normal boring working day. You have some feature that needs to be done, but you don't have this feeling that you want to work. And then you start playing games or maybe searching something in the internet and your feature is not ready. This is actually happening a lot in remote work because when you're in the office, you have this office mood. You see other people working, you're also working, and you're in the mood to do something. Remotely, it might be more difficult for you to stay in focus. This is why you need to have stand-ups with your team at least once per day, so you show some of your progress and you can feel some pressure and that some stuff needs to be done. And you might have one more big problem from the management perspective. Just imagine they saw you in the office every single day and now they don't see you there at all. This is why they want to control you. They can call you, they can write you every single day, maybe every 2 hours. And this really disturbs and doesn't make your work better. Which means you really need to clearly communicate that you have features, that you are doing them on time, and you are doing your job and you don't need to be disturbed that often. And here are some things that people are lacking while working remotely. And the first in this list is of course social interaction. When you're in the office, you are communicating with other people, you're talking about code, about work, about something, so you're communicating with people at your work every single day. Now you're working remotely and yes, you chat with some people, you have calls, but it's not the same, which actually means you are isolated and it doesn't fit everybody. Because a lot of people still need some social interaction. The next problem is lack of strict working hours. When you're working in the office, normally people are coming at 9 or 10 and they're leaving at 6, which means you see people leaving the office and normally you are going at home also. But when you are working remotely, it's much difficult to control this. You start working in the morning and you end somewhere in the evening, it might be 6, 7 or 8, doesn't matter, you are already at home. This is why I highly recommend to track your time and always start and end at the same time like you are doing in the office. For example, you started at 9, then you must end at 6 and not later. And my last point is the most important. We're lacking movement when we're working remotely. If we just sit there at home every single day without any movement, it's not healthy at all. When we're going to the office, we normally walk at least several kilometers per day, but we're not doing that when we're working remotely. This is why you really need to control it. For example, in your lunchtime, you might go outside for 20 or 30 minutes. Also, I highly recommend you to do your sport at least several times per week. It is really easy to forget about it because you simply are at home and you don't want to go outside. As you can see, there are quite a lot of negative points in working remotely. Working remotely is not for everybody. And actually, if you are interested in my tips how to stay productive, don't forget to check this video also.